Attention prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Master of this day of judgment in which we now live. Thee alone do we serve, and Thee alone do we beseech for help. O Allah, guide us on the right path, the path of those upon whom Thy favor is brought down, nor of those who go astray after they have heard Thy teachings. Ameen. I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is his messenger. Thank you all for joining me today on the Narrative Podcast. I would like to greet you in our original language with the words of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Holidays for Black Folks YouTube channel. I am Sister Adria Muhammad, aka Queen Adria, and this is the Narrative Podcast. We are here to narrate the culture and heritage of Black folks in America. Our culture, our heritage, our history will not be erased, and we're going to make sure of it. We are here to educate, elevate, and celebrate who we are and what we do. So, happy holidays for Black folks. Thank you for joining us again. The theme of our show or our presentation today, or this for the whole month, is Juneteenth. This is the month of June. And for those of you who don't know, this Black holiday, Juneteenth, is celebrated each year on June 19th to mark the day in 1865 when Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation and free the last remaining slaves in America. The proclamation was actually signed in September of 1862, and it was made effective January 1, 1863. So the freedom that the people in Galveston were entitled to was delayed by 2 years. And just so you know, the idea that the enslaved people of Texas did not know that they have been freed is a common myth. Many enslaved individuals already knew about the proclamation, but remained enslaved due to the resistance of the slaveholders. So they fought back and did not want to free them. But Juneteenth, that's why Juneteenth is often referred to as Freedom Day, symbolizing the delayed but hard-fought liberation of Black people in America. So last week, in our premiere episode, and I want to thank you all again for tuning in and subscribing to the channel to make this day happen, or these days happen now. But last week we talked about the emancipation of the mind and what it must have been like to walk off the plantation with absolutely nothing, not even your own name. We also introduced you to two people who are the champions of Juneteenth and who worked to make sure that Juneteenth became a national holiday. So shout out to the father of Juneteenth, Representative John Myers, and the grandmother of Juneteenth, Dr. Opal Lee. While these two champions did dedicate their lives to the fight to make Juneteenth a national holiday, they didn't do it alone. It was we the people, the Black folks especially. We joined the fight and worked together to make it happen. This is how we keep our culture from being erased, by getting involved. Before we get started, let's make sure you subscribe, like, and share this channel so others can join the Holidays for Black Folks community here on YouTube. Okay, so we also discussed in our previous live stream that there are more than 10 Black holidays that must be celebrated, not just by Black people, but by everyone, because we know that Black history is American history. The Black holidays are Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Black Love Day, Savior's Day, Harriet Tubman Day, Black Marriage Day, International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade. Juneteenth, July 4th, 1930, which is Nation of Islam Independence Day, and Holy Day of Atonement, Reconciliation, and Responsibility anniversary of the wonderful Million Man March. Mothers of Civilization Day, and none other than Kwanzaa. Visit our website at www.holidaysforblackfolks.com and click on our live chat bot to ask Miss Kichi about each of these holidays and anything else you want to know about holidays for Black folks. The more we celebrate, the more we are unified. And the more we are unified, the more we thrive. Make sure you like and share and subscribe to this channel and join us each and every Saturday at 10 a.m. Now, I have to tell you, you saw that we were a little delayed in coming on. And it's because pulling off this presentation is a lot, and we need help. We are building community, and we need your help. Holidays for Black folks is looking for volunteers. If you would like to help us narrate the culture and heritage of Black folks in America and promote the mainstream celebration of holidays for Black folks, please email us a letter and your resume or one or the other, but send it to info@holidaysforblackfolks.com. Let us know what skills you have and how you would like to contribute to the movement. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Okay, I want to share a slideshow with you today that I prepared and see if I can accomplish that. Juneteenth is happening next weekend. And as we are approaching the actual date of the holiday, I kind of want to walk us through a timeline to freedom and just kind of review. We have to look back at our past so that we can navigate our future. So today we're going to do a two-part series of a timeline to freedom. I couldn't possibly cover it all in one session, but I can definitely give us a walkthrough in two sessions and have us ready by the time we actually reach the actual holiday celebration. So we will walk through Juneteenth, a timeline to freedom. Give me a second here. Okay, here we go. Let's see if we can get these slides up. Okay, so our timeline starts in the era of absolute freedom. And basically, what that means is I know you may have heard before that Africa is the cradle of civilization. So we're going to walk you through the era of absolute freedom and that was the 1500s or prior to the 1500s, and then all the way up to the 1800s. Okay, so starting with the era of absolute freedom through the interruption and legalization of and legislation of slavery, legalization all over the world, and the rise of the Maroons and the revolution, and all through the domestic cruelty and liberation, and Abraham Lincoln's role in that. So, up to the Emancipation Proclamation. So, let's get started. Okay, but we're not just going to give you the bad news, we're going to give you the good news too. Because simultaneously, while we were experiencing this act of genocide against us as human beings, we didn't just take it on the chin. We were thriving, we fought back, and we were still the masterful inventors, archaeologists, air, aerospace engineers, mechanical engineers. We still thrived in agriculture, in engineering, in the science, and medicine, and education. And I'm going to walk you through that. So let's start with Africa, because this is where all human life originated, on the African continent. The oldest human remains found on the planet Earth were found in Africa. And it was the remains of the Black woman that were found around in the area of Ethiopia. And they kind of gave it a name, Lucy, but we would have never named her Lucy. And we know her name was not Lucy, based on her geographical location where archaeologists found her. But the oldest living remains found on the planet Earth were found in Africa, which means that Black people are the original root of the entire human race. Everyone came from us. We built civilizations and explored the planet long before other modern races evolved and explored the planet. Black people built sophisticated civilizations and explored the planet before the grafting of the other races and cultures of people. But everyone came from us. In 1311, the ninth emperor of Mali in Africa abdicated his throne to personally command a massive fleet of 2,000 ships, demonstrating that Black societies engaged in deep maritime exploration centuries before Christopher Columbus. That emperor's name was Emperor Abu Bakr II, and he was the ninth emperor of Mali. In 1441, Portuguese mariners raided the West African coast and kidnapped the first free West Africans, initiating the European exploitation of Africans. So basically, what this means is there's a slave trade. Slaves were being traded all over the world, and Spain and Portugal were the countries or the cultures that initiated this process of slaving people in Europe. So they kind of established the European slave trade. June 1452, Pope Nicholas V issued a document that officially granted Spain and Portugal a religious right to conquer the non-Christian lands and reduce their inhabitants to perpetual servitude, providing the legal framework for global human trafficking, even though they didn't consider us to be human. But it was the Pope who gave the green light, who authorized the enslavement of Africans in Europe. So in late October 1526, Spain attempted to found its first colony on mainland North America called San Miguel del Guadalupe. I hope I said that right. The exact location of this attempted colony is not known because it failed. 100 African captives revolted and collapsed the colony, forcing the Spanish to flee while the Africans escaped into the interior forest to live permanently as free people among local Indian tribes. These free people became known as the Geechee Gullah community. Similar communities were known as the Maroons. This failed colony is believed to have been located near Sapelo Sound or Sapelo Island, which is a barrier island off the coast of Georgia and Brunswick, Georgia. Now, I've actually been to Sapelo Island. I took my children there on vacation back in 1996 when they were little. And in visiting that island, I learned that the people there, the Gullah Geechee people, also spoke, there were members of the community that actually spoke their original language because they escaped slavery and they did not go through that process of being denied the right to their culture. So lots of culture and heritage remain, and there are inventions that came about and processes for handling food, and the culture is very rich and still active and in existence today. In South Carolina, on the at the Atlantic Beach, which is a historical beach, it's called the Black Pearl. There's a Geechee Gullah Festival, and it's that's not the only place where it exists. Also in Charleston, and all up and down the southeast coast of America, where you can find the Geechee Gullah people, especially from Georgia all the way up to North Carolina. So if you ever get a chance, go to the Geechee Gullah Festival in Atlantic Beach or the Black Pearl in South Carolina, or go to Charleston, and you will see at the marketplaces the sisters making baskets and weaving them, and you will learn a little bit more about how those baskets were used. So this was a failed revolt. Now, also there were the Maroons, and the Maroons, when they escaped slavery and went into the dense part of the forest and into the swamps, and from the the line, the state line of Virginia, all the way down the southeast coast of America, there is a big portion of that is covered with what is called the Great Dismal Swamp. And that Great Dismal Swamp is where the escaped Africans got away from their captors. And they built communities. They traded with the Indians, and the Indians kind of worked on their behalf outside of the community at the border of the Dismal Swamp. And they traded the things that they need to build their society and build their communities in the thick of it. And many trappers and hunters tried to penetrate that Great Dismal Swamp to get to the Maroon people and bring them back to slavery, but they were unable to find them. They were unable to deal with the dense terrain of the forest and also the wildlife that was there. So, from what I understand and what I've read, many of these the people that went in to recapture those escaped Africans, they went into the Great Dismal Swamp and never came out again because they could not navigate the woods and the wildlife and the dangers of being in such an uninhabited thick of forest and swampland. Okay, moving forward to the 1500s. In 1562 and 1564, Sir John Hawkins launched England's transatlantic slaving voyage, the first one. And on that voyage, after that voyage, Queen Elizabeth recognized that profitability of the trade was very high. Now, this is Queen Elizabeth the First. And she leased to Sir John Hawkins a Navy warship called the Jesus of Lubeck for his second voyage. This made the British monarchy a direct financial investor in chattel slavery. Okay, now, back then, now we are the United States right now. And when before we became the United States, we were not called united because we weren't. We were 13 colonies of European countries. And there was the French colonies, the British colonies, and the English colonies. And so you had the New England states and the other, you know, breakdown of all the other states. And they're not really states, they were colonies. So there were the New England colonies were the colonies like Maine and Boston and those areas. And so each part of America was broken down based on the European country that claimed that territory when they sent their explorers to claim North America, in complete disregard of the fact that the land was already settled by the indigenous people or the Indians. Now, if I told you earlier that the Black people are the original people of the earth, so in consideration of that, being Black people, the only people on the earth, we absolutely explored the whole planet. And we not only did the Spaniards come and explore America, not only did Christopher Columbus come and explore America, America had been thoroughly explored by the time those people came along, because Africans had been on the continent centuries before the Europeans even knew how to navigate the ocean. And when I say centuries, I mean not just century, millennials, because we're the original people of the earth. And with that being said, what we have to conclude is that when Black people explored and came to this North American continent, they settled there. They evolved there. They adapted to the environment here on the North American continent. There were people all over the planet who were moving from place to place and settling. So if when John Hopkins, by the time they came, this land was inhabited by Indian people who had procreated with Black people. Because one thing we know for sure is that people are going to get together. So when Black people came here, of course, the Black men who explored and came here procreated, and a whole culture of people were born over a process of thousands of years and settled here. But fast forward to the 1300s, in the 1500s, when these other evolved cultures of people traveled to North America, they did not come alone. They had employees on those ships who worked to help them navigate, because Black people had already been here. So we knew how to navigate the ocean. We knew, some of us knew the lay of the land, and they were hired to support the voyages that were made by some of the French, the Spanish, and the English coming to the North American continent. And these were free Black people. So we have to conclude that the first Black people to set foot on the North American continent were not slaves. They were free men who were explorers themselves, and who were employed by some of the other cultures of explorers as well. But in 1562, this is when the English or the British that monarchy became direct financial investors in chattel slavery. So before we continue, make sure you subscribe to this channel, like it, share it, so others can receive this information. All of this information can be researched through the National Smithsonian Museum for African American History. Now, let's get back to this information. John Hawkins actually was hired as England's Navy commander and slave trader. He was their official Navy commander and slave trader. So they gave him the coat of arms uh, and the ship, Jesus, the ship Jesus. So you've heard of Black people standing on the shores of America, looking out at the ocean, singing, "Just give me that good ship Jesus." And it was kind of weird that he named a ship after Jesus Christ, considering what it was for, a slave ship. That's not something Jesus would ever have approved of. So they gave him the coat of arms and the ship. In late August 1619, in what is now known as Hampton, Virginia, and it was historically known as Point Comfort, the English privateer ship known as the White Lion arrived with 20 plus Angolan captives to be sold to English colonists in exchange for food. These slaves were initially treated similarly to white indentured service, poor white indentured services. So it's not the same kind of slavery that was experienced later during the transatlantic slave trade. They were kind of treated as domestic workers, and it was a little bit more dignified. It was more like a job, and some of them even got paid. In 1640 and 1641 in Richmond, Virginia, and Boston, Massachusetts, a Black runaway servant, John Punch, was sentenced to servitude for life while his accomplices received an extension of a short contract. In 1641, Massachusetts became the first colony to formally legalize slavery in its written statutes. In 1662, Virginia declared that a child's legal status follows the status of that child's mother. So, if the child's mother was an enslaved woman, then the child was born into slavery or permanent bondage. This happened after the Bacon's Rebellion in 1676, where an interracial army of poor whites and Black workers, the groups were separated, and this began chattel slavery. So in 1641, when crimes were committed by John Punch and his accomplices, the white accomplishments, they gave him a harsher sentence than they gave the poor white accomplices. And this was kind of the beginning of legal injustice being handed out to Black people just like they are today. So we've been fighting that long for justice, freedom, justice, and equality. Now, the power of Blackness, in spite of all of this, the power of Blackness cannot be stopped. We are people of invention, people of discovery. We were explorers, engineers, scientists, doctors, you name it, we could do it. By 1662, the legal trap was fully sprung. Virginia passed the horrific law stating that a child's legal status followed the mother, cementing slavery as a permanent hereditary condition. The law declared that these children were property and capable of higher thought, stripped of human status, but the human mind cannot be legislated into inferiority. Fast forward to 1721 in Boston, Massachusetts, a devastating smallpox epidemic was tearing up the white population, and Western medicine is completely helpless. Didn't help. Whatever they were trying to do was not working. Entered a slave man named Onesimus, he didn't look at his captivity and surrender his intellect. He handed his captor cotton matter, and it's a complex medical secret from West Africa, the science of variolation. By scraping an active infection into a healthy vein, he created the biological blueprint for modern vaccination science. Think about the profound irony. The very legal system that labeled Onesimus a subhuman was forced to rely on his superior medical knowledge just to survive. In 1705, the Virginia slave codes officially reduced human beings to chattel property. Okay? These codes were designed to systematically crush the soul, erase identity, and ensure total mental subjugation. They claimed that African was a biological blank space, devoid of culture, literature, or spirit. But look at how genius shatters the code. In 1773, a young kidnapped slave named Phyllis Wheatley publishes a book of classical poetry that stuns the transatlantic world. Thomas Jefferson and European elites literally held trials to cross-examine her because they refused to believe a Black mind could master such complex theology, philosophy, and meter. Her book didn't just entertain, it was a political weapon. She proved that you can chain a person's body, but you cannot look up you cannot lock up the brilliance of the human mind. Phyllis Wheatley. Later, I will share in our presentation one of my favorite poems by Phyllis Wheatley, which she had many, but poetry, music, literature, science, education, medicine. These are all accomplishments that were achieved by Black people in spite of the torturous, inhumane treatment we were undergoing in the process of chattel slavery. Next week, we will go through part 2 of the timeline to freedom. Thank you for joining me. I pray you are enlightened by the information shared today. Join me for part 2 of Juneteenth, a timeline to freedom, next Saturday at 10 a.m. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great week. And please subscribe, like, and share this channel if you haven't already. Turn on your notifications so you won't miss the announcement the next time we gather to narrate the culture and heritage and celebrate holidays for Black folks.